Absolutely. Well, listen, I got a burning question for you. Did you vote for yourself already?
I did vote for myself. We have, let's see, 4 registered voters here currently. We have 5 children, but only 2 are still in the home. So I was testing it to see, as soon as I got my application, how long it would take to get my ballot. I got it, I don't know, within 6 or 7 days. And then my husband kept saying, let's turn it in, let's turn it in. But I did so with mixed feelings because, you know, I've run for judge before, and I was up for re-election as judge. And, you know, it's pretty satisfying going to the polls on election day always, but especially when you're on the ballot. But I actually sent in my absentee ballot because I figured I'd be busy enough on Tuesday. So I did.
Great. So you did apply. You sent off for the application, you got the application, and then you got the ballot.
Yes. Well, everybody received an application, although I think some people didn't realize that's what it was. But I just wanted to test how easy it was to vote, and whether or not what they were saying that the clerk's office was doing, and what Jocelyn Benson wanted to do actually was easy to execute. And in my community, it was. And every time I talk to anybody, I ask them, did you get your ballot? Did you get your application? And, you know, how did you vote? Because it's one thing to say that that's what we're doing and making it easy, but really what we know is that you have to listen to people to see if that practically plays out.
Right.
But I think it varies from township and community to community, to be honest with you.
I agree. Hey, did we lose Robyn? Robyn, are you still out there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you?
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Okay, I didn't see your picture. Usually I can. So I sit in Detroit. I'm in Wayne County, and I took a big risk. I did send off my ballot too, but I did it by mail because I wanted to test the mail system, and I sent it Wednesday at 5 p.m. And I did the ballot tracking thing on MVIC, you know, Michigan Voter Information Center, and my clerk did get it, get the ballot.
Okay.
So,
I did the drop-off because, you know, I honestly, okay, so COVID's just made running a campaign so unusual and different. But one of the big things that we are dealing with is delay in the mail. So if part of your campaign message is through mail, usually, you know, these things are timed precisely. We chase the AV ballots. We know exactly who has a ballot, who's holding it. And you try to hit the mailbox at a certain time. But with the complications that I think obviously are deliberate, with our postal service, it's just not as dependable as it once was. So I did drop mine in the drop box.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I went to the township. I lived in Van Buren Township, and you can just fill out the absentee ballot. I filled it out, voted, turned it in, so I didn't have to worry about that.
So you did early voting, Robyn.
Right.
Okay, great. Well, listen, I've got this countdown clock behind me, and really it's just one day and a few hours until the primary, and there's a super hot primary out in Oakland County between the 12-year incumbent Jessica Cooper and a former judge, the Honorable Karen McDonald, who's in this insurgent candidate of sorts and has got all these big Dem nominations. And so how are you feeling about this race, and what made you run?
You know, we have a day and a half left or whatever, and it's been a long time. I was somewhat unusual of a candidate. I stepped down from a seat I could have had probably for the rest of my career as an Oakland County Circuit Court judge. And
yeah, I saw that 7 years family law, like you have a background, worked as a prosecutor and at Jaffe, and
yes.
So you were saying judgeship.
I had to, the law requires you to step down from a nonpartisan judicial seat. If you want to run for a partisan seat, you have to step down a whole year ahead of the filing deadline, which was in April. So I had to resign in April 2019, with obviously no assurance that I was going to win. I mean, when I decided to run, I knew there was a likelihood that Jessica Cooper would continue to run. She had already let everyone know that her deputy was running, and her intention was to step down. She's 74. She was going to retire. I got in the race. She decided she was going to run again. I fully anticipated that. But honestly, I just had enough. I mean, everybody coming into my courtroom every day, had a substance abuse issue, a mental health issue, the charging decisions I saw from the prosecutor's office, the complete unwillingness to be reasonable and approach the justice system with some kind of common sense about trying to address underlying reasons why people were there, especially when you talk about the juvenile docket. I just felt like what I wanted to do, I couldn't do as a judge. You know, you're impartial. By the time somebody comes into your courtroom, they've already been charged with the crime. The prosecutor holds all the power. We can't, as judges, dismiss cases. I mean, or reduce them. We'd be automatically appealed and overturned. So it's the prosecutor that's really moving the needle on whether or not we're going to approach things in a common sense way. And one of the big things for me was that we don't have a prosecutor who will participate in any kind of treatment court whatsoever. No drug treatment, no veterans treatment. I really want to start a mental health court. She just doesn't think that's her job. She says, I'm not a social worker. That's not for the prosecutor to do. I mean,
so there are specialty courts in Oakland County Circuit Court, but the prosecutor doesn't, the prosecutor's office does not participate in the
exactly.
Okay,
and in 2008, when she took office, she refused, and they had to do an emergency rewrite in Lansing of the statute because it required the prosecutor's involvement. And there are a lot of good reasons why. First and foremost, you can be a lot more effective if you have the prosecutor at the table, because that's the entity that agrees to dismiss or reduce a charge at the end. But second, you also want the prosecutor at the table to either consent or object to the person's involvement in the treatment court. So this just seemed backwards and antiquated. And again, we're a standout. We're the only county that doesn't have a prosecutor that will do that. But then just more globally, there's, a movement in the country and the state, our statewide electeds like Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist and our Chief Justice Bridget McCormick, really committed to some sort of criminal justice reform. And we really need that in Oakland County, and people want it. So we incarcerate more people in this country than any other country in the entire world. And Michigan is one of the highest rates of incarceration. We have a serious issue with racial disparity in how we charge and who's convicted and how the length of their sentences. I want to point out
that there is a disparity between Black and brown defendants and non-Black or brown defendants. I used to practice at Oakland County in criminal defense, and frankly, I gave it up because I just never could get any deals from my clients, and it was very frustrating.
There are a number of criminal defense attorneys that have expressed concerns. I mean, I practice in Wayne, Washington, sometimes Oakland, but they say the Oakland is one of the worst. Is not very progressive. Is very rigid.
Well, she has a no deals policy. So right. You show up at court and the assistant prosecutor has no authority to do anything except, do you want to plead your client or do you want to go to trial? I mean, it just doesn't make sense, and I sort of smiled when you said, oh, we do have a racial disparity. Our first forum that we had hosted by the Oakland County Democratic Party, we were asked, both of us, what role does the prosecutor play in racial disparity? And her answer was, we don't really see racial disparity in Oakland County. And this is so troubling and disturbing for me. I mean, okay, even if I wasn't running against that candidate, even as just a member of this community, it's troubling that you can look at what's going on in the world and say, we don't have that problem in Oakland County. And by the way, we know we have that problem in Oakland County. And in 2014, we had the case of Mackenzie Cochran, who was an unarmed Black man held down by 3 white security guards. He said for 9 minutes, I can't breathe. And he was killed. And Jessica Cooper held a press conference saying, there will be no criminal charges here. This was just a result of lack of training. Now, both of you are lawyers, but you don't have to be a lawyer to know that there's no lack of training defense to murder. So we already know what she would do with the George Floyd incident. Right. And she's had so much protest and loud voices from the communities, all different kinds of groups. And her reaction to that in the last several months has just been to basically hide away. She's not out there in public. She won't ever, go down to the people who are calling for her to speak out, who are protesting in front of her office, who are calling her out on all sorts of ways. And I just think the county deserves better. We need somebody who's going to be approachable, relatable, is willing to sit down at the table and listen and talk, and then also just approach things in a more common sense way, all the while holding people accountable. I'm a member of this community. I'm a mother. I want my community to be safe. But I also
think— Are you a true Democrat? Are you a true Democrat? Because I've got to ask this question. This came from a Facebooker who sent me this question that wanted to pose to you. You're running as a Democrat. I've seen your signs all over Oakland County. They're everywhere, and they're amazing, quite frankly.
Thank you.
But there's this question about, we know that for the judges' races, that's nonpartisan. This is a partisan race, as you mentioned earlier. And there's a question about whether you're truly a Democrat. There were some reports that you sought the endorsement from both the Democratic and the Republican parties, and that you appeared at Republican events. I know that you've received some endorsements from some heavy hitters in the Democratic Party, A.G. Nussle and the Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist, and frankly, someone who could be your parallel in Wayne County, Kim Worthy. What do you say to this?
I'm so glad you asked me this question. We're lawyers. We're used to defending ourselves and advocating for our clients and ourselves. But this is one of the most enraging things that is out there that is solely trackable to Jessica Cooper and her deputy, Paul Walton. Karen sought the endorsement and wasn't sure which party she was going to run on. You know what? That is 100% inaccurate. It is not true. And I would love somebody to tell me why, how to support that, because there's absolutely nothing behind it. Here's the thing. When I ran for judge, it was a nonpartisan seat. I did like every other single judicial candidate. You must and are required to, and I think should, seek the support of all voters, regardless of their party. We don't want our judges to have a D or an R after their name. I am proud that while on the bench, people didn't view me as a Democrat or a Republican, because we shouldn't view our judges as such. But what I will say is that when I was 18 years old, I went to Alma College, a small liberal arts, fairly conservative school, and I packed my "Do Caucus for President" signs, and I started the first Alma College Democrats they've ever had. I've been a Democrat my entire life. And candidly, one of the reasons I've chosen to leave that post as being a judge is I just got to a point in my life where I didn't want to have to be silenced about what my views were. I finalized the first same-sex adoption in the state of Michigan, and I am very proud of that. My decisions, though you could not possibly, and I'm proud of that, view them as Democrat or Republican, you can absolutely tell what my worldview is, which is all people should be treated equally and fairly, despite how they identify, despite the color of their skin, despite their religious beliefs. And I have been a fervent pro-choice advocate my entire life, and I 100% absolutely did never approach the Republican Party in Oakland County to see if I wanted to run as a Republican. Honestly, If I were a Republican, it'd be a little easier. I wouldn't have had a primary. I could have just taken Jessica Cooper on in the general. But, I'm a Democrat, and I am not going to apologize that I have Republican support. My guess is both you two know a lot of people who aren't Democrats that want to see Jessica Cooper out of office.
That's what I was asking you. What I wanted to know, I know Tracy had her question. What I want to know is Jessica Cooper a Democrat? Because
exactly.
From what I'm hearing, shout out to Angela Strong Marks, who is one of the people who is leading the protest in Oakland County with the case about Grace and everything. And Angela put a whole platform together. And, we are going to be interviewing later on one of Grace's attorneys. But is Jessica Cooper a Democrat, a progressive? Because from all the stuff I'm hearing about her, I don't know her. She's welcome to come and we'll interview her. But all I'm hearing about her is not a good look. Like I was talking with you earlier. I shared on my Facebook, one of our colleagues, Tony Carson, said that there's a commercial playing in the Black community from Jessica Cooper's office saying, "Not another Karen." And it speaks to this bigger, broader issue about the Karen, some people having issues with some white women that have been labeled, you probably don't appreciate it, as Karen. I have friends that are Karen. I have white friends that are Karen that are true sisters.
Listen, if you were born in the 70s and you're female, chances are Karen was one of the names.
Yeah, you probably don't appreciate this whole, just like Becky's. There's some good Becky's. I went to school with some Becky's and Karens that were good people that probably like, why y'all gotta be making a bad white woman
Robyn, now
Becky,
this is a radio ad that is running on Black radio, or what they call urban radio. I haven't heard it yet, but as I understand it, it uses, I'm in voiceover work myself. And so as I understand it, it uses someone's voice who sounds discernibly Black, female, someone who uses certain vernacular. And so what is this ad saying? We don't need another Karen? Is that
Yeah,
it?
that's what I was reading Tony's. I posted it. She said, "Hello, Facebook family. I was driving today, heard a campaign commercial that was so offensive and racially motivated that I thought I was driving through Mississippi in 1962. Tracy, what did I say yesterday? I said Michigan is like the Mississippi of the North. She said it was none other than Jessica Cooper, not another Karen commercial. That Karen that is being referred to is Challenger Karen McDonald. And she said, she goes on to say, she said she initially voted for Jessica Cooper, but then after she saw the way she was as a prosecutor, she rejected. She regretted it. She said, "I can't tell you how many times I wanted that vote back when I was in court with the defendant who deserved a just plea offer." And she said, "Now I no longer live in Oakland County, and I rarely think of Miss Cooper, but her ad so offended me that I had to share the contempt for this type of pandering. She has a voice of what appears to be a Black woman saying in effect, not another Karen. I find this offensive because it makes light of the Karens who are racially insensitive and cause harm to African Americans. And I'm so offended that by the sister girl dialect, I'm sure this only plays on urban stations. The voice actor is making sure to drop her G's and throws in her sass." She says it's insulting to any of the Black voters who consider her their candidate for prosecutor. So Judge Karen, you're not another Karen, you're Karen McDonald, but what is your response to this?
My response to it is look at my record, look at my endorsements. I've been endorsed by the Oakland County Democratic Black Caucus, the state of Michigan Democratic Black Caucus. I've been endorsed by organizations that solely focus on racial justice. And, look, I think your point about who's a Democrat, I tend not to want to get into that because I think it's just silly. But if we have to compare, you're talking about a 12-year incumbent who openly and publicly and fiercely advocated against the Miller decision. She believes the juvenile life without parole practice is not just constitutional and appropriate, but she advocates for it. Out of 47 of our juvenile lifers, she only agreed that 3 of them could have sentences for a term of years, which means that 44 she thinks should remain in prison for the rest of their life with no parole for something they did when they were 15 and 16 years old, which is completely opposite of what the United States Supreme Court said. And she's not even in line with really law and order conservative types. I mean, the fact that she doesn't want to take part in a treatment court, it's 2020. The fact that she doesn't think we should have a conviction integrity unit because she thinks her convictions are solid because she has really good lawyers making charging decisions, and that's quote straight from her mouth. Not the prosecutor's job. The fact that she doesn't care about cash bail, she says once again, not the prosecutor's job. That's the judge's. I mean, she's a standalone. So, she can talk about my name all she wants, but I'm going to keep talking about my policies and my beliefs and why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I think voters are smarter than that. I don't love the fact that my name's being used to represent somebody who's, narrow-minded and racist. That's terrible. But I think for the most part, people understand. I mean, here's what I think. It's really sad to me that we have to even have a name for somebody like that. Because I have to tell you, I have been talking for an entire year to this entire county, and not just, white communities. I've been talking to communities of color, religious leaders, city officials, just as somebody walking down the street. People want common sense. They want a leader that's going to be compassionate, but also hold people accountable. And they want somebody that will be available to listen and talk to. And so I just keep trying to pivot when I hear all that noise from her, because honestly, That's the sound somebody makes when they're really worried. And you know what? She should be. She should be worried, because for me to have accomplished this much support, both from endorsers, but also financially, I've outraised her from January to our most recent filing, all basically majority of that time during COVID. I outraised her 14-1. She is struggling. She does not have the support of her party. And I think now she's just trying to make noise. And I just think people are smarter than that.
Right. And I was just surprised that here, when I'm vice president for Black women lawyers in Michigan. Tracy is a member as well. And we have had about this case with Grace, people have protested there. There's been marches, rallies. We've talked about it on the show. And then for her to put a commercial out there, and there's already concerns about what happened with Grace, and thankfully the Court of Appeals decided to release Grace, because I was shocked. I do educational advocacy, and I've worked at the juvenile court in Detroit, where we have a specialized program where that Judge Joseph is the leader of that program, and we exhaust every remedy. You would not put a child, the only way we have a child being locked up is if they got a new case, and if it's after you've given them counseling, therapy, you exhaust. Deb Nelson is the administrator of that, and that program, and you pour everything you can into that program to avoid the kids being caught up in the school to prison pipeline. And Judge Brennan made that decision. Now, I wasn't in that court, so we said we weren't in that court. But the prosecution, they said it was the probation officer. She switched officers, and then all of a sudden they want to lock her up in the middle of a global pandemic. And then again, my firm, we do personal injury, wrongful death. I'm hearing all kinds of lawsuits. You got Figer just sued for that young man that got killed in Kalamazoo, that got roughed up in a residential facility. And it's like, what are we thinking here? I'm not saying, obviously, normally there are situations where there are people that are really a danger to themselves and others. That's why I'm always talking about mental health facilities, short term, some people long term. But, to put a commercial out like that, it's almost like she's fanning these flames. You got people that are riled up. They don't have jobs. They don't have opportunities. And then you're going to put something like that out there. It's incendiary. And and she's a prosecutor. So I don't understand that. So, but Karen, so if anybody wants to support you, like, what do they need to do to come out? We know they need to vote, but also want to help your campaign. I know we're close to the wire. Where do they go to support you?
Well, my website, McDonaldforprosecutor.com, I have a really active social media footprint, an Instagram, a Facebook, Karen McDonald for Prosecutor. I think the way people can help is just to get the word out, even if it's just telling their neighbors and friends in their group, their church groups, their social networks, that we have a choice now. For the first time in 12 years, Oakland County actually has a formidable opponent to Jessica Cooper. She has remained in that position because nobody's challenged her except on the Republican side. And as you know, Oakland County is trending blue, and I believe we're going to continue to be blue. So just to find out who you're voting for and why. I think that what's really disappointing to me about this case with Grace is two things came out of this that I think are positive. One is the ProPublica article was able to get data and analyze it, that juveniles of color were, I think, 40% more likely to be charged. So that's great data that we need to know. We need to be transparent about who we're charging and what we're charging them with, and I have pledged to do that. Jessica Cooper will not. But the one thing I want to point out, and maybe I'm just being a little defensive because I was a judge on the family bench in circuit court. Judges don't bring cases. Prosecutors bring cases.
That's right.
And they ask certain things of a judge to do, and then the judge makes a decision. So you have a situation where the prosecutor came in and said, please detain her. And Judge Brennan made a decision. And now that it's gotten some heat, the prosecutor says, well, wait, no, never mind, just please release her. Not based on anything except didn't want to be accountable for the decision that she made. And just like you, we're reasonable people. Tell us why you made the decision that you made. Tell us why you charged her. Tell us why you charged her with a probation violation. Tell us why you wanted her to be detained. And that's just the kind of leader I think we want. You're not going to agree with every single thing a prosecutor does. I know that. But I think generally people just want to know that they've been heard and that they have a reasonable, fair-minded person in that office. So I'm not surprised she's pulling this kind of stuff. I think she's really worried and struggling, and she should be. I also want to point out that I was endorsed by the Detroit Free Press and the Detroit News. The Detroit Free Press has endorsed Jessica Cooper for 20 some years and endorsed me instead of her, which I think is really telling. And I'm very proud of that because it is an objective news source. And so I would encourage people to look at that. There's a nice article that was written, and it really highlights my race, as well as my website and my Facebook. There's a 3-minute bio video. We're running commercials, and I'm not running commercials talking about somebody's name or their hair or their clothes, which is also what she's been saying. I'm actually talking about.
Oh, really? That is just so petty. I'm like, this is crazy. We're in the middle of, we got a global pandemic. We had the George Floyd, we've got all these pressing issues that are
I gotta check that out. I haven't seen those commercials.
Yeah,
but
we'll have to check that out.
We gotta switch gears because we're going out to Macomb County next. I wish we could talk with the candidate longer, but it's been a fascinating time. And
I'm glad we could connect. I met you with that interview with Judge Nance, and so good luck to you. And,
thank you.
Yeah, and hopefully
I just want you to know, I'll be making a call January 1st, 2021, because I need people like you helping me. I'm not going to do this alone. We need to change and shift and be more reasonable and care about issues like racial disparity. And I'm counting on leaders like you to help me do that.
Right, I hear you. Thank you. And that's why we did it. So thank you. Okay, well, good luck.
You. Okay.
All right.
Have a
Thanks
good day.
for joining us.
All right.
Thanks for your time. Good luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Tracy, so we're actually going to need to zoom out of this one and go to the next one with Eva. It's a separate Zoom.
Yeah, I wondered about that. Okay, well, hopefully the candidate, Eva Toczek, who's running, she's one of 5 Democrats running for Macomb County Prosecutor. That's a fascinating race because, Eric Smith resigned before he got indicted by AG Nessel on embezzlement and corruption. We're going to tackle that race next. So I'll see you soon on the next segment.
I'll end this and then we'll join up with another session. Stay tuned.
Okay.